Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to be with you all here on this weekend. We're joining you from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. That's where the majority of the team is and where we're broadcasting from. I'm actually making my way back to Florida after a good reporting trip over in Houston, Texas. So excited to share the fruits of that trip with you in the days and weeks to come. Principally, we're there to talk to the astronauts and cosmonaut who are making up the Crew 11 cohort, who are set to launch from Launch Complex 39A, heading up to the International Space Station no earlier than the 31st of July. So just a few weeks from now, when that next crew is set to head up. Of course, that's contingent on the return first of the four astronauts of Axiom Mission 4, set to undock from the Harmony module coming up on Monday. They'll be splashing down off the coast of California, and that'll set the stage for Crew 11 to launch aboard Dragon Endeavour, making its sixth flight to space. Tonight, though, we've got another Falcon 9 launch on tap for you. Of course, you're looking live at Space Launch Complex 40, where the Falcon 9 standing tall. Some mystery surrounding this mission, as heading into this launch operation tonight, SpaceX has, up to this point, not disclosed the identity of either the customer or the payload that's on board. However, we have since learned that emblazoned on the payload fairing is the logo for the Israeli Aerospace Industries, or IAI. We're hoping, as we look a little bit closer on that payload fairing, you can just see facing us the edge of the right-hand side of the letter A and then the second I in IAI. Satellite on board believed to be a communications satellite that was first announced back in January of 2020, called Dror-1, DROR. In Hebrew, Dror translates to freedom. Again, this is a communications satellite that's designed to operate in geostationary Earth orbit for about 15 years. This particular satellite type is built on IAI's Amos satellite bus. For those who remember the history of that, go back about a decade to ahead of a static fire test of another Falcon 9 rocket. There was, of course, an upper stage explosion, and the Amos 6 satellite was lost as a result of that. All going smoothly, though, tonight, as we're currently T-minus 55 minutes, 33 seconds, and counting ahead of the planned flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. And we're very glad to have the 800 plus of you who are with us in the live chat. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button and sharing the stream. It allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we continue on with the countdown. We want to thank our moderators in the live chat who are helping us out this evening as well. So big tip of the hat to Jeff Hansen and Mark Otto for holding it down. You can make their job that much easier just by following the rules of the chat. Also, Rick Donner is with us as well this evening. We ask that you refrain from using all caps when you type your message, that you converse in English so that our moderators can understand what's going on and respond as appropriate. We ask that you refrain from delving into topics of overt politics and religion, and most importantly, that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. Also, thanks to our one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, who's in the chat and answering questions for folks as we, during our commentary, can't address everything that's popping up in the chat. So appreciate Cumulus for that as well. Speaking of our channel members, they're the folks who make this live launch coverage possible, as well as uh, the sustaining members who help make on-the-ground reporting trips like the one we're just wrapping up from in Houston. So thanks to folks like Alan Gable, the Rocket Girl, Sulfur for Lunch, Bill in Lauderdale, Charlene, Tobe Wobe, Captain KC, and many, many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Want to welcome Bill in Lauderdale back with us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Good to have you with us, Bill. Beverly Knuckles marking a full year with us, 12 months as a channel member at the pad leader level. Pad leader level. Last little bit of housekeeping. If you have a comment or question or would just like to offer some words of support like Joni did, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature to have your comment or query elevated. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is very much appreciated. Speaking of Joni, very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Joni, who says, hope to have a great launch. And that is always our hope. Also want to thank channel member and moderator Jeff Hansen for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Jeff. Giving us our context super chat as per usual. Jeff says, go Cape, go SpaceX, go Falcon 9, go GTO-1, and Godspeed 1083. 1083 is the tail number of the Falcon 9 first stage booster that is set to fly here tonight. Going to be launching for a 13th time, and we'll run through its history a little bit later on in the broadcast. It has carried a number of important missions, including some key crew operations. Those included the flights of the Crew 8 mission to the International Space Station and the free-flying operation known as Polaris Dawn. Speaking of folks to thank, our Spaceflight Now editor Stephen Young is running the technical operations of the broadcast alongside our John Pisani. Adam Bernstein is braving the mosquitoes, making sure the cameras are on point and in focus. Be sure to follow all of our photographers. You can see them, their handles here on the screen. Michael Kane is at MD Kane Jr. Adam is at A Burn NYC. John is at John Pisani Photo. And be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Threads, and Facebook. We'll be joined with tracking assistance by our friends Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Just about 50 minutes ago, as we're heading on into this opening of what is currently a 3.5 hour window remaining for SpaceX. They're targeting a liftoff of their Falcon 9 rocket at 1:04 a.m. Eastern, assuming all remains on track. For those unfamiliar, SpaceX uses what's called a load and go style of fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, meaning once tanking begins, they are locked into whatever T0 that would present. They do not have the option of holding once fueling is underway, since they use a super cold densified liquid oxygen. Generally speaking, the call for the start of fueling is coming up at the T minus 38-minute mark. Let's go ahead and run through with you the countdown timeline and talk about the other milestones that we're looking forward to ahead of a good launch of the Falcon 9 rocket tonight. After we get through that point of the SpaceX launch director giving the go-ahead for the start of prop load, fueling of the Falcon 9 begins at the T minus 35-minute mark with the loading of a rocket-grade kerosene, referred to as RP1, on the first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T minus 30 minutes is when SpaceX begins loading cryogenic helium on board the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same is true on the second stage a few minutes after that. Helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T minus 23 minutes, the second stage RP1 tank is full. Then at T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process gets underway. We see this manifest as the so-called big vent at about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds here at pad 40. And this is SpaceX thermally conditioning the feed lines ahead of loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's second stage. The venting lasts about 4 minutes in duration, and second stage LOX load will begin at the 16-minute mark. Given that this is a customer mission, we should also be getting pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket beginning just about a minute after this point as well. T minus 7 minutes is when the Falcon 9 engine chill will begin. The company will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect the 9 Merlin engines of the booster from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. The clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, and it stays in that position until liftoff. And then at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of this Falcon 9 rocket. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute afterwards, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before flight. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlins are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting 1:04 a.m. Eastern, 05:04 UTC for those around the world. We're in just about 45 minutes and 40 seconds. Time now T minus 44 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. We'll talk about the weather in just a moment here, but want to give you a view stepping back in time just a little bit to when our photographer Adam was getting set up with all his cameras. Took a moment to pop up one extra one for a really nice time lapse of the moonrise tonight. Let's take a look at that since it popped up just to the right of the pad from this camera's perspective. Just a couple days beyond the moon being at its peak fullness. We're just passing what's referred to as the buck moon, as in a male deer, a buck. Really nice rise of the moon tonight, again at practically 100% fullness. The next proper full moon is going to be coming up on August 9th. That is referred to as the sturgeon moon. It'll be at its peak at 3:55 a.m. Eastern. And again, that's coming up on August 9th. That'll be followed by the corn moon on September 7th. You can see as the moon is rising, it's peeking just a little bit into some clouds, but not too bad in that shot. The 45th Weather Squadron heading into this launch opportunity gave a fairly decent outlook for liftoff of the Falcon 9 tonight, about a 80% chance for favorable weather. Primary concerns, the presence of cumulus clouds and anvil clouds in the area. Forecasts just remain pretty steady from L-2 to L-1. If for whatever reason SpaceX needs to stand down from a launch attempt tonight and pivot to its 24-hour backup opportunity, the weather concerns are largely the same. The outlook does dip just a little bit, down from 80% favorable to 70% favorable in a 24-hour backup scenario. Time now T minus 38 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. just about a minute away, broadly speaking, from when the SpaceX launch director is set to make the call on the start of prop load for today's mission. I want to thank a few more folks in the live chat as we're getting to that milestone. Thanks to channel member Tobe Wobe for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that generosity. And to our 5 newest gifted channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Tobe in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. I want to skip down to a super chat from channel member Alan Gable, who brings up a question that we were just talking about behind the scenes that we're not sure we've actually seen before. We've got our best guess, but Alan says, I was gifted a membership, but I have a paid membership. What's the difference? As far as we can tell, getting gifted a membership when you already have your own membership, we're assuming would just give you a free month in addition to what you've already paid for, is our best understanding. As a reminder, when someone gifts a membership, it is randomized as far as to whom it goes. So we don't have control over that. The gifter doesn't have control over that. That's part of YouTube's system. Candidly, I was under the assumption that a gifted membership would go to someone who didn't already have membership. So we'll see if we can poke around and get you a better answer to that, but that's our best guess at this point. But thanks for the question. Thanks for the super chat. Just under the 38-minute mark now. At this point, the SpaceX launch director should have made the call on the start of prop load. Fueling of the Falcon 9 will begin at the T-minus 35-minute mark, so we're just a couple minutes away from that. Before I get there, I want to thank a couple more folks for your support this evening. Sulfur for Lunch, marking 11 months with us as a channel member at the mission specialist level. Notes another month down, 1 year coming up. Yep, right around the corner. Glad to have you with us all this time. Glenn A has been a member with us at the mission specialist level for 21 months, cruising in towards 2 years. Glenn says, go GTO. Bill in Lauderdale with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Bill. Tipping for the mods, thanking them for all they do. And yes, we certainly appreciate all the help from our moderators. So thanks to Mark Otto, Rick Donner, and Jeff Hansen tonight. I also want to welcome in new channel member Doug Ross, joining us with membership at the pad leader level. See that helicopter go by just on the edge of the horizon there. Last from the chat for now, the Rocket Girl, been a member with us for 11 months, also at mission specialist level. And we thank those of you who are able to support at the higher tier levels, as that allows us to keep our entry-level membership at the current price it is. So thank you so much for that. Rocket Girl says, almost a year of watching the sky light up with Spaceflight Now. Thank you to the whole SFN team for the great coverage and tracking. Go SpaceX, go Falcon, go B1083-13, and go Spaceflight Now. And yes, as the Rocket Girl was referencing there, the booster is going to be flying for its 13th time coming up here in just about 35 minutes. We're now just under 35 minutes and counting. At this point, assuming all is continuing to move as expected with SpaceX, fueling of the Falcon 9 should be underway. We're going to be watching for signs of tanking now at this point since, well, given this is a customer mission and this is not just a Starlink fare, we may actually get word from SpaceX directly that fueling of its Falcon 9 is underway. But let's just, for the sake of sake, make the assumption that this is more like a normal Starlink flight and we're not going to get an update from SpaceX. Here's what we're looking for. If you take a look near the base of the rocket, you can see kind of where the color gradient changes. And actually, you can just barely make out the lettering of SpaceX there on the booster. If you can see where the X is, kind of where the lighter gray shifts into a much deeper charcoal gray. It's kind of a white line that separates those two. It's right about at that white line that we'll start to see a frost line form and a little bit of vapor in that part of the rocket as well as that aforementioned super cold densified liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the booster. Time now, T minus 32 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. Just starting to build up. We're seeing that frost line form near the base of the rocket, and you can start to more clearly see that vapor trail off as the temperature difference between the significantly colder LOX meets the much more warm and humid Florida air, creating that vapor effect. Is a good visual indication that, in fact, fueling is underway on this Falcon 9 rocket, which means SpaceX is keying into a liftoff of this launch vehicle coming up at 1:04 a.m. Eastern, 05:04 UTC for those around the world. If you're just now joining us, we're T minus 30 minutes and counting away from the launch of SpaceX's latest Falcon 9 rocket, set to lift off from Space Launch Complex 40 there at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. You're watching Space Flight Now's live coverage of the mission dubbed Commercial GTO-1. Welcome in. Hopefully, you're all doing well out there. We appreciate you stopping by for this latest live launch coverage. At this point, SpaceX is in the process of fueling its Falcon 9 rocket. As we are just past the 30-minute mark, they are also loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels on the vehicle's first stage. That'll be used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Second stage cryogenic helium load will begin in, just about 3 minutes from now. In under 8 minutes from now, we'll see the start of the big vent as SpaceX thermally conditions the feed lines there at the pad ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load. Before we get to that point, though, I want to talk a little bit about this first stage booster, which is getting ready to fly for its 13th time so far. Tail number B1083. Let's give you a brief history of where it's been before it goes ahead and hits its Baker's dozen launch. This vehicle began flying with a mission up to the International Space Station. NASA's Crew 8 flight that lifted off on board Dragon Endeavour, which is getting ready to launch once again with the Crew 11 mission, lifting off from Launch Complex 39A. As it did back on March 4th, the booster will have a touchdown back at Landing Zone 1 following stage separation in its boost back burn. Next flight for B1083 was a batch of Starlink satellites lifting off on April 10th of last year. This was the Starlink 6-48 mission, followed by Starlink 6-56 on May 8th. Another crew mission followed that using the Dragon Resilience. This was Polaris Dawn, which took flight on September 10th of last year. That free flying mission, of course, commanded by Jared Isaacman, who also commanded the Inspiration 4 flight, and in fact just donated $25 million, he and his family, to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama, in order to support Space Camp, which was very formative for Jared coming up as a youngster, now hoping to inspire future generations with the Inspiration 4 Polaris Center. Having spent a few reporting years myself in the Huntsville area, covering Marshall Space Flight Center, I highly recommend if you are in that neck of the woods visiting the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Lots of cool things to see there, including the Rocket Garden, and it's one of the few sites where you can see a full Saturn V vehicle in its various segments. Also nice because you've got a Saturn V not only in the building, but also one that's standing out near the edge of the road. Helps really give the Rocket City a feel of its name. But I digress. Coming back to this rocket, Falcon 9, 1083. Its next flight was the CRS-31 mission on November 5th of last year. That cargo flight bringing thousands of pounds of science and supplies up to the orbiting outpost. Another batch of Starlink satellites followed that up, Starlink 6-65 on November 30th. Then a mission out to GEO, the Astronis from one to many, carrying those 4 satellites lifting off on December 29th of last year. Coming into 2025, you had Starlink 13-1, a rideshare mission comprising of 21 Starlink V2 mini satellites, and a couple of Starshield satellites hitching a ride as well. That was followed up by Intuitive Machines' second Nova C lander to launch on a Falcon 9 rocket named Athena, or Addie, with a few ride shares of its own on board that particular Falcon 9 rocket. Following the IM-2 launch, we're into Starlink land for the next three flights. It's Starlink 12-17 on April 13th, 6-91 on May 10th, and 12-24 most recently on June 10th. That brings us up to the present, where in just a little more than 23 and a half minutes, we'll see the flight of this particular Falcon 9 rocket, B-1083, flying one more time for flight number 13. Time now, T minus 21 minutes and counting. We're coming up on the big event here. I want to thank the 1,500 plus of you who are watching with us live tonight. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button if you haven't already, and share the stream to allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to let us know in the live chat where you're watching from tonight, whether you're in Florida, see the big event starting there right on time. Good visual indication that fueling is moving along as expected. Again, this event will last about 4 minutes in duration, trailing off and setting the stage for the start of second stage liquid oxygen load. So we've got MLG Pure checking in from southern Wisconsin. Of course, a number of folks from here in Florida. Dirty is in Winter Park. Tornadoes Gaming checking in from the Lake Worth area. We've got Pickwick Lake, Tennessee, Long Beach, California tonight. A couple of California folks in the building. Arlington, Virginia. And for those just curious and a good clarification for those who may just be popping into the live stream now, as our moderator Jeff Hansen reminds folks, this is a launch from the Sunshine State of Florida. This Falcon 9 lifting off from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Time now, T minus 16 minutes, 29 seconds and counting. As you can see, the big vent has now tapered off. Second stage liquid oxygen load is just about to get underway. And also, in just about a minute or so, we should be getting pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket courtesy of SpaceX. Time now, T minus 13 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Coming up, the next milestone that we're expecting on this Falcon 9 rocket, now that second stage LOX load is underway, will be the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines that's set to begin at T minus 7 minutes. SpaceX will float just a little bit of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. T minus 12 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. As we're cruising into the final part of the countdown, let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket's going to be flying once it does leave the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? This Falcon 9 is going to be taking off from Space Launch Complex 40 there at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and will fly in an easterly direction once it leaves Florida's Space Coast. At the point of stage separation, the first stage booster, B-1083, will target a touchdown on the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions, which is stationed out in the Atlantic Ocean. SpaceX is working to certify its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights apiece. Again, this booster is flying for a 13th time today. If successful with this touchdown, it will mark the 128th booster landing for this particular drone ship and the 474th booster landing overall. SpaceX, of course, interested not only in extending the number of times that its boosters can fly, but the payload fairings as well. It's also trying to get those out to 40 missions each. Following atmospheric reentry, they will make their final splashdown in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. SpaceX will then bring the fairing halves aboard their recovery vessel. Today, they're using the vessel known as Bob, named for former NASA astronaut Bob Behnken, one half of the duo that flew the Demo 2 mission back in May of 2020. Before we see this Falcon 9 fly, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the workhorse vehicle for SpaceX. Tonight's mission will be the 502nd flight of a Falcon 9 rocket and the 85th Falcon 9 to fly so far in 2025. Falcon 9 stands at 70 meters or 229 feet in height and has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Most of that is made up by the booster stage. Little technical gremlin there. Again, this is B-1083, which has flown 12 times previously. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are three mechanical latches that attach the vehicle's second stage. At first stage managed to cut off. High pressure helium is used to release those latches. Four pneumatic pushers ensure clean separation. Just listening to SpaceX commentators, they note that the range is ready to support. Weather remains good for a liftoff. Just want to pause and pivot for just a second. We'll come back to parts of the rocket here in just a moment. But with this shot now, the Falcon 9 rocket, you can more clearly see the logo that we were referring to earlier today. SpaceX in its commentary just referring to this as the customer, but that is the logo of the Israel Aerospace Industries company, AIA, which lends further credence to reporting that this payload on board is the Dror-1 communications satellite. Coming back to our own rocket graphics here, we were just moving up to the second stage. Upper stage, the Falcon 9, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust. It'll be fired twice on today's flight. Actually, getting a little ahead of myself. SpaceX did not note how many upper stage burns there will be before the deployment of this satellite. But the notices to mariners note that there will be a deorbit burn following the separation of the payload. The MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix as the first stage, that being RP1 and liquid oxygen. Payload fairings are at the top of the rocket, which are made up of a carbon composite material and are 13.1 meters or 43 feet in height, 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. SpaceX reports that one fairing half has flown for, or will be flying for its 18th time, and the other for its 14th time. We're just under 5 minutes now. We're coming up on the strong back retract sequence. Typically, we'll get a close-up shot of the payload fairings, which should give us a better view of that logo. We'll wait to see if we do, in fact, get that shot. In this close-up shot, we're getting a much better view of the payload fairings here in this shot, again showing the logo for the Israel Aerospace Industries. SpaceX has been continuing to refer this as just the customer and has not made any specific reference to the satellite on board, just referring to there being satellite within the payload fairings. But you can see the clamp arms just beneath those fairing halves have now opened up, and the transporter erector will soon recline away from the Falcon 9 rocket. You can see it actually in motion right now, just ever so slightly leaning back away from the rocket. First stage liquid oxygen load is complete. We're about 2.5 minutes away from liftoff now. Second stage LOX load will wrap up at the 2-minute mark. Less than 2 minutes now on the clock. The second stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Right now, you're seeing a little bit of extra venting, which are the ground gas closeouts, as SpaceX clears the liquid oxygen remaining in the feed lines there at the pad. Just as a bit of housekeeping as well as we approach the 1 minute mark, you can see our clock is a little bit ahead of what you're seeing from SpaceX. Reason for that is our clock is in real time, where you're seeing from SpaceX is coming in on a slight delay. So we'll be making our call outs based off of real time events while we still have tracking camera views of the rocket.
Startup. And there's that.
Coming up on the go for launch from SpaceX Launch Director.
Launch Director, go for launch.
And with that confirmation, we are now 30 seconds away from the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. "20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Commercial GTO-1 flight. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. A little more than 30 seconds into the flight right now. As the Falcon 9 continues to climb, it's approaching max Q, point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. The rocket will throttle back a little bit as it passes through that mark in the mission. And you'll see the engines throttle back up. Passing through max Q now. About a minute and a half into this mission now. Coming up will be a few events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 28 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation, and then the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage at about T plus 2 minutes and 39 seconds. About a minute afterwards, there will be fairing separation. However, as SpaceX has noted in its commentary, there will be no upper stage views shown of the rocket at the request of their customer, Israel Aerospace Industries. Now, T plus 2 minutes, 24 seconds into flight, coming up on MECO. There's MECO. Stage separation. And second stage engine start.
Confirmed.
Excellent callouts coming in here from the nets.
Evac ignition.
And good callouts there. Now coming up in just a few moments, we should be hearing a callout for fairing separation. Now both fairing halves on today's mission are flight proven, with one half flying for its 18th time and the other for its 14th time. And these will be
A little more than 3 minutes into the flight now. We're coming up on that fairing separation milestone in just a few seconds. And there go the payload fairings. Again, there will be no onboard camera views of fairing separation today. Coming up, the next milestone as we're approaching the 4-minute mark will be the start of the first stage entry burn, which will begin at about T plus 6 minutes and 14 seconds, lasting a little less than 30 seconds in total. 3 engines on the booster will reignite to dramatically slow the vehicle down. The booster is reaching its apogee here. It looks like it'll top out at close to 120 kilometers in altitude. Now, a little more than 5 minutes into flight, we're just about a minute away from the start of the entry burn. Good work by our tracking team this evening. And not too much interference from the clouds around the Space Coast either, which has been nice to see. Now, T plus 6 minutes into the flight in real time. We're just about 10 seconds away from the start of the entry burn that we should see with our tracking cameras. Hopefully. Entry burn is now underway in real time. Just seeing that glow. Dipping in and out of the clouds here a little bit. little tricky dipping in between some of the clouds from our vantage point here. Turning now to the SpaceX onboard cameras, since it's coming in on a slight delay and we can see it a little bit better from this vantage point.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
And with the conclusion of that entry burn, just about 7 minutes into the flight in real time, the landing burn is going to be too far out and too close to the horizon for us to be able to see with our tracking cameras here in Florida. So we're going to be relying on the SpaceX onboard cameras now for these final moments. And because the customer has requested no upper stage views of their satellite, SpaceX is going to be ending its access of its launch vehicle just after booster touchdown here. And the SpaceX launch commentator noted that there will be a call out for SECO-1 just before the start of the landing burn. So the upper stage engine is actually going to be concluding its burn right about in tandem with the start of the landing burn. And you just heard that call for
Stage
SECO.
1 landing burn.
And we are now waiting for Falcon 9 to land on our drone ship. Just read the instructions.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Great callouts there from the second stage while we're watching the first stage land.
Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And with a good touchdown of that booster, that completes the 13th trip to space for B-1083. A look inside Mission Control there in Hawthorne, California. That good flight marked the 384th good touchdown on a drone ship. Well, SpaceX has completed now, this is their 502nd Falcon 9 launch to date, as the SpaceX commentator noted in their coverage. This is the 500th successful SpaceX Falcon 9 launch, given that there were anomalies that prevented the successful deployment of the payloads for both the CRS-7 mission as well as Starlink 9-3, which actually just had its anniversary just a day or so ago. Coming back here to Pad 40, as we've been mentioning, because the customer has requested no upper stage views to be provided of their satellite, its deployment, or its identity. SpaceX coverage of this mission has come to a conclusion, and our views have wrapped up from the SpaceX onboard cameras. We're getting our launch replays ready for you here before we go ahead and wrap things up on our end. But as we're getting that in work, let's go ahead and turn to our mission stats as they currently stand. With a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, that marked the 13th flight of Falcon booster tail number 1083 in the SpaceX fleet. This was, as we just mentioned, the company's 502nd total Falcon 9 launch to date, but their 500th fully successful Falcon 9 flight. This was the company's 85th Falcon 9 launch of the year so far, the 440th Falcon booster reflight, with a launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 149th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 265th from Pad 40, and the 320th overall orbital launch from Pad 40 as well. Here's the bar chart representation of SpaceX Falcon family of rockets over the years. Moving on to some recovery stats now. This mission marked the 128th good landing on the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions. This was the 384th drone ship landing and the 474th overall booster landing for SpaceX as well. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 60th orbital launch from Florida this year, the 90th from U.S. soil, the 100th from U.S. rocket company, and so far the 150th orbital launch around the world. There have been 3 orbital failures on the year so far. Here's where the pie chart, how it currently stands. As things are wrapping up here for tonight at Pad 40. The next mission coming up for Pad 39A is actually going to be in a few weeks. During the briefings about the Crew 11 mission, Commercial Crew Program Manager for NASA, Steve Stitch, noted that the Crew 11 flight will be the next mission lifting off from Historic Launch Complex 39A, so plenty of time to make sure that everything is in ship shape for this pad and make sure the Dragon is ready to make its 6th flight as well. This will be the first time that SpaceX and NASA are launching a Crew Dragon vehicle for a 6th time. And so there are still some components of that Dragon vehicle that need to go through their final recertification. NASA and SpaceX are ultimately looking to certify the Dragon vehicles for up to 15 flights apiece. And there are some components that are currently certified for that 15 flight milestone. Others are a little bit lagging behind that, but they are making progress towards that ultimate goal in order to allow for continued missions for NASA's Commercial Crew Program, currently to the International Space Station, but of course, the ISS is set to retire around the 2030 time frame, so NASA wants to make sure it still has a good ride up to what will hopefully be at that point at least one, if not more than one, commercial space station. As we're thinking about the future with commercial space, let's go ahead and take a beat and reflect back on where we just came from with the launch of the Commercial GTO-1 mission. Starting with our launch replays, we begin with the fixed press site view set up by our Adam Bernstein. Moving on to the wide view now. Moving on to the South Tracker perspective from our friend Pete Carsons with Max Ski Productions. As these replays are continuing on, want to take a beat to go through some comments from you that have been supporting us during this live launch coverage. Want to thank Alicia Delegati for a $10 super chat, one of our channel members, who says, "Keep up the good work, Spacefly Now team. I appreciate all the space-related content." Channel member Alan Gable, been with us now for 8 months, pad leader level, who says, "Go SpaceX." Alicia Delegati, gifting 5 Spacefly Now memberships as well. Really appreciate that generosity, Alicia. And to our 5 newest gifted channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And actually also want to thank Larry Mask for gifting 10 Spacefly Now memberships, and Tobe Wobe for gifting another 5. So to our 20 new gifted channel members, welcome to all of you. Glad to have you all with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Alicia, Larry, and Tobe in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. This message from Josh King coming in before liftoff, who says, "This will be my second launch I've seen in person. Got a clear view of the pad from Banana River. Go Falcon." Moving on to Pete's wide tracker view. Hopefully, Josh, you got a really nice shot of the Falcon 9 as it made its ascent from the pad. Glad you got to see this one in person, my friend. Lloyd Green with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Lloyd, for your support tonight. Macaw SJ, been a member with us now for 4 months at the pad leader level, who says, "Thank you, videographers. Y'all are fantastic, as is everyone at Spaceflight Now." The kind words, Macaw. Bill in Lauderdale, thanking the moderators for making sure that the live chat was staying kosher during the broadcast today. Rocket Lady Elizabeth with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Elizabeth. Really appreciate that. Good to see you this evening. Channel member, I'm Lita. Been with us now 19 months at the pad leader level, who says, "Loving every moment." Thank you, Lita. Glad to see you sticking with us. And Snake 2.0, the $2 super chat, saying, "Really well done." Thank you for the kind words, Snake. And yes, our launch photography team did an excellent job, as did John behind the switching. Turning now to Chuck and Jen Briggs' view from their tracker in Titusville. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close out our live coverage tonight. One last thank you going out to Jim Edgar with a very generous $20 super chat, who says, Lisa Bean and Jim Edgar watching from Snoqualmie, Washington, with the cats Kip, Lola, and Miko. Very kind. Go Will. Thank you, Jim. Hope everyone up in Washington is doing well. With that, we're going to go ahead and close things out tonight. Appreciate all of you for sticking around to the very end here. Big thanks to our moderators in the live chat, to Jeff Hansen, Rick Donner, Astro Joe, Aussie Space Girl also joining at some point in the broadcast. Apologies for not catching that before now, but appreciate you guys for helping us out as well. Thanks to channel member Cumulus Granadas for answering folks' questions in the chat as they came up as well. Big thanks to our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Their help and support in tracking the Falcon 9 rocket. You can follow our photography team of Adam, Michael, and John here at their handles on X. Thanks as always to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for also helping with the technical aspects of this broadcast. Most of all, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from today. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, ring that bell, and that way you won't be left in the dark whenever we start a new broadcast or post new video content here to the channel. And we've got some exciting things coming up here from our week in Houston. Just making my way back to Florida now, stopping over for the evening in Alabama, and then we'll be back in Florida before you know it. But lots of great things to share with you from our time in Houston, including, of course, some great conversations with the 3 astronauts and cosmonaut who are making up the Crew 11 mission. We'll have that coverage for you in the lead up to their launch coming up here at the end of the month, no earlier than July 31st. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. Until then, bye-bye.